Welcome to Passive Aggressive Income. This program may contain strong language. The content may not be suitable for audiences under the age of 17. We understand many of our listeners may not agree with all of our personal viewpoints. We in no way, shape, or form mean to be offensive to anyone. Our show notes will provide all of our source material included for each episode. Now let's get passive aggressive.
Hello again. Welcome back to Passive Aggressive Income. We are your hosts, Lexi and Mims. Excited to have you here for another week. Last week, we talked all about move-in process. When you get new tenants, what does that look like? What are the things you need to do in advance? This week, we're going on the opposite end and we are talking about moving out. So what happens when your tenant gives you notice? What are the procedures you need to follow? What does move out inspections look like? Talking about security deposits, all of that kind of stuff. Again, this is sort of Mim's expertise, and she's the one who's really using the long-term tenant strategy. I'll jump in talking about midterm and short-term rentals with my experience as they come up.
Okay, we are, like Lexi said, we're going to be talking about the move out process. So your tenant has moved or has provided you with a notice. First things first, check to make sure it is aligned with the lease agreement. Some tenants like to pull a fast one and try to vacate before they can. So make sure they are fulfilling their current lease's obligations. For example, my notice requirement is 60 days and they can only provide that to me once they are on a month-to-month tenancy. Make sure that it's not a 30-day if you have a 60-day requirement. Make sure it's not a 15-day if you have a 30-day requirement. Make sure that you look at when they gave it to you and when they have listed their move out date for. If for some reason they try to give you a notice during a 1-year or a 6-month lease agreement that is still in effect, then you have to provide them with break lease options, as they cannot vacate the property without breaking their lease because it's a binding lease agreement. So essentially they're trying to get out of their legally binding lease. They can't because they have signed up for the terms and the length of that, which is outlined in it. So they have to break it. You should have already a drafted up break lease options. Some people like to put 2 months as a lump sum in order for them to break it. It depends on what you personally like to put in there. But just make sure that you have that in case this does happen to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have sort of a funny anecdote to share about when I broke my lease because I bought my first duplex. My husband and I were living in an apartment and we signed a year because we weren't really sure what our plan was. And I think we talked about this a little bit in episode 2 when we talked about how we got started in real estate. I had these talks with Mims and her husband and our friend Alicia, who was on in I think episode 3.
Yep.
And that just got Alex and I so excited about buying a property that we're like, you know what, we can break our lease. We'll pay the penalty or whatever. And we were the first ones to live in our apartment. It was a converted Wells Fargo office building. So during that time, there was a lot of trial and error that the apartment complex was dealing with how the manager wasn't super great and all of the processes weren't necessarily in place, but they asked that we give them 2 months notice and that we would also pay 2 months to break the lease. And then we would, they would do an inspection, we could get our deposit back, our pet deposit, all of that kind of stuff. But during the middle of this like 2-month transition since we gave them notice and when our lease was actually ending, they switched property managers. So the person that we were working with directly, she was very nice, but she like didn't do her job very well. She apparently like didn't really give memo on like what the status of where we were at was. So we ended up not having to pay our 2 months notice. And we got our security deposit back, which at the time we paid, I don't remember what the amount was, but they ended up giving us more than our security deposit back and more than our pet deposit back. So we actually made money breaking our lease and buying our duplex. And if we were just to like stay the rest of our like 5 or 6 months on the
Oh my God.
rent.
That
It's
is
just,
so bad as far as management. That is just crazy.
I know. I felt kind of bad, but also I'm like, not my responsibility. Like as a landlord, you gotta take responsibility and make sure that your processes are in place. Otherwise tenants like us gotta reap the benefits.
Yeah. And this is gonna go back to what I mentioned before in the move-in process. If you are a land, or I'm sorry, not a land, a property owner that wants to be hands off and wants to have a management company in place, you need to do your research when it comes to who you're putting in charge of managing the property and managing the tenants as well. I have worked with a ton of different management companies here in the Fox Valley. And if anybody personally has had a conversation with me, I have rattled off at least 5 of the companies in this area that I will never put my properties in the hands of. I have maybe 2 solid companies in this area that I would do so, but I don't have a lot of trust or faith. And in the other experiences that I have witnessed myself, I I think I could do a far better job myself. It's not as passive as I would like it to be, but I know that I'm getting everything done according to how what my standards are. And I am, if anything is going to be awry, it's going to be my fault. And I'm going to maximize all my rent. I'm going to maximize the aesthetics of my units. I'm going to make sure that everything is being taken care of as far as maintenance requests. It's not going to be a week out. It's going to be, within 24 hours or 48 hours or however long it takes for a maintenance professional to get out there. It's not going to be mismanaged. And moral of the story is that you should really vet the people that you're going to put your buildings and units and tenants into the hands of.
Mhm. Yeah, I think as a property owner, whether you're planning on renting out any portion of your home or you're just dealing with it yourself and hiring contractors or handymans to, fix any issues that come up, I think it's a big balance being a property owner of letting go of some control, but not letting go of too much control.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where it's like, yeah, it'd be nice to have a property manager, but I also, or like have a company like remodel my bathroom that I just completed. But I know that like I'm going to do a better job. And
Mhm.
that's if I have the time and the means and I'm like available to do that, then that's something that I'm going to take on responsibility for. As
Yeah.
like no one's going to treat your property as good as you will. And
Right. Yeah. It's not the, and you know what? Why should they? It's not their babies. It's ours. We put in the time and accumulated all the money to buy it. And then we have put in the time and money and effort and sweat equity into the actual property. And they are just doing a job. And I feel like a lot of people that know leadership positions and CEOs know that nothing is going to be done in the way that they want it to be done, because to them it's just a job. For business owners, for CEOs, that is like their blood. That is everything. That means it just means so much to them, and it's a different level for them, obviously.
right. Yeah, so it's definitely like trying to find that balancing act where you take on responsibilities yourself or you find people that you really trust and you vet them
Mm.
and you do everything you can finding recommendations and hopefully it all works out. But also, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna find people who like don't do a good job. We all have stories like that. It's just kind of the process of learning. And as you get more into real estate, you build those contacts and things get easier.
Yeah, and if you're buying in an area that you aren't familiar with, look at Google reviews. You can see what the tenants have experienced, and a lot of them are going to be maybe a little bit blown out of proportion, just because a lot of tenants are mad at situations, and then they take to the internet,
That's
to
with
vent.
everything. I will always be more inclined. I'm trying to work on this, but I think it's human nature to be more inclined to write a bad review when you have like a shitty
Yeah.
experience versus like when everything goes well, you don't always think about like, oh, let me write this online about how great it was.
Yeah. But if you see a lot of common problems, a lot of common issues, like a lot of the issues would be like, my maintenance guy wasn't here until 2 weeks and since I submitted my maintenance request. Like, that's not good. That is not good at all. Or you see a lot of, well, I walked into the unit and there were still things in it, or I couldn't get the keys on time, or just things like that. That is just something that should be practiced well and is entirely in their hands. You should really look into that.
Mhm.
Okay, so moving on. Make sure to write down their vacating day and every place that is relative, that you're looking at every single day of your life. Physical, electronic calendars, an Excel spreadsheet that holds all move out information. I know some landlords that track their move outs through an Excel spreadsheet when they're dealing with mass move outs at the same time. And the Excel spreadsheet lists the following: the unit address, the notice date, the move out date, the condition it is in, and what kind of flip it requires, light, medium, or heavy, or none. And the scheduled move out inspection date that has been coordinated between the landlord and the tenant. These are all the things that you want to have on that spreadsheet if you choose to do it that way. So you want to be 100% positive that both you and the tenant have the same move out date recorded. You don't want to be on different days. You want it to all align. You don't want to have a move in scheduled when they're still in the unit that is just really bad and a lot of messing around. So just make sure that everybody's on the same page. And here's a tip: if you are bad at math like me, when it comes to prorated rent, if there are not moving out on the last day of the month, on Zillow there is a calculator you can use to do it for you. Yes, I'm gonna plug Zillow
Zillow
again
coming in
on
clutch
this.
again.
Yeah, they have a prorated rent calculator, and as well as for pet rent too. So you just have to input how much the rent is, what the month and the day is, and then they will calculate it for you.
That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
Zillow. I think I'm gonna have to start using Zillow more because I didn't realize that all of these resources were out there and free. That's incredible.
Yes, like I said, and like 3 episodes, I will die by Zillow.
That's why they should sponsor this episode.
Yes. So next we're going to be talking about scheduling the move out inspection. I highly suggest that you do not skip this step, as when you are filling the unit, you need to know what kind of condition it is in. There are a ton of inspection forms you can download off of the internet, or you can create your own. I know that I have created my own. I just go room by room and I just write down the condition of what it is. And I see like, oh, it needs a new, I don't know, set of light bulbs or something like that. I just write it all down. Here are maintenance issues that you should look out for during your final inspection that is not cosmetic. Water leaks from the bathtub and or toilet. Thoroughly feel the floor around it as well. If it feels squishy and soft, it's time to replace the subflooring and the flooring. I have had to do this. It sucks, but you have to do it. Ceilings, look out for water damage seeped through and created stained and mushy panels. Check their smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors, as well as sometimes tenants take out the batteries or they're no longer working. So make sure that they are in working order. Lights that no longer turn on when you flip the switch. Bathroom fans have to be running in order to control the moisture in the bathroom. And then check out how the water heater and furnace is doing, especially if it's old. So you're probably not going to be in the unit or the building very often in a long-term tenancy. So it's good to, whenever you're there, just to take a look at the big appliances, the big things that make the building run. Also see how the curtains are doing. Well, not the curtains, like the blinds. Sometimes with pets, they get torn down or chewed up. So it may be time to replace them if there are some damage to them. And now here are some things to make sure you notate when it comes to cosmetic issues. The flooring. So if the carpet or flooring has seen better days, if there are deep scuff marks, severe carpet stains, missing wood planks, it may be time to upgrade the flooring. And I promise you, this will save you money in the long run.
And another thing to mention is like pet smells in the carpet. That is huge. That's sometimes that doesn't go away and you might just need to rip it out and start over.
Yes, and it really does seep through. It goes all the way to the bottom, to the subflooring, and that is a pad. So it really keeps in that moisture. If you get the right material and do it right, like I mentioned before, the LVP that we get is a life-proof brand, and the grade is 20%, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. I believe it's called Pergo, and it is sold at the Home Depot. Here's a tip. When floor shopping, grab a sample that they provide, have the and then take your key and scratch the surface of the sample and see how it holds up. We have looked at a shit ton of different floorings, expensive, low end, middle of the road, and you would be surprised at some of the brands and how easily they are at being scuffed up. So just make sure that when you are shopping, you go and it's just a little sample. It's not like you're damaging anything that is being sold outright. So go ahead and do that just so that you have peace of mind.
Yeah, they give you those little squares for free for you to take home. So that's a big suggestion. You can see like what the thickness is. You can take it home. You can look at it under different lighting scenarios. You can, scuff it up in different ways and see how it holds up. Lifeproof from Home Depot is also the brand that we use for our LVP, just because it's for the price. I feel like the quality is so much better, and they have so many different options as far as colors and textures and things too.
Yeah. And then look at the walls, see if there's crayons, holes, scuff marks, candle wax. I know that personally, I've done that. So that's
me too. On a few occasions.
And make sure the necessary repairs are done. Putty and paint go a long way. Upgrading countertops, fixtures, appliances, vanities is completely up to you and your budget. If you are prepared to put in the money and the work into the unit to spruce it up, you'd be able to ask a lot more for rent to match it. And then once you have the maintenance and cosmetic issues compiled and analyzed, you will be able to determine what type of unit flip you will have to take on. So light, medium, heavy, or none. Next, we're going to be talking about the move out email. So like in the previous episode, I talked about a move in email. And then this episode, we're going to be talking about the move out email.
Oh, actually, before we move on, I wanted to ask a question. Since we're talking about the inspection and sort of you're now understanding what needs to happen before you can get a new tenant in there, with long-term tenants, what is your sort of standard vacancy time that you keep to like do any necessary fixes before like minimum time between tenant moving out and new tenant moving in?
If it's a light flip, like I'm only doing cleaning, I'm only doing like small maintenance repairs, it's going to be 1 day.
Okay.
Medium, it's a deep clean. There's things that I want to, like a whole wall needs to be painted, but not the entire unit. Or maybe just a section of flooring needs to be replaced. Well, actually, medium to heavy, I do 3 days max.
Okay. And how early do you do the move-in inspection from when they're actually like give notice to when they leave? Like what is the time frame that looks like?
I do it more towards the move out date. So I would do it like 2 weeks beforehand.
Okay.
It does help when a lot of the things are packed up. Just to know like what it all looks like underneath. So the further out that you put it, the better, but that does create a problem with finding contractors if you are going to go that route instead of doing it yourself. You want to make sure that your contractors are aligned with the date that you're needing them for them to be at the unit to make any sort of repairs or replacements. So it's kind of a fine line that I dance with, a week out to 2 weeks before their actual move out date. If I can clearly see that the unit is in really good condition, then that shouldn't be that big of a deal as far as me getting in there and just doing a light flip. But if it's a heavy flip, which I have done before, it is the sooner the better.
Right.
So I'm going to cover what my move out emails look like. So a formal greeting addressed to the tenant, and I include the unit address so that there is no confusion on who I'm talking to. I stated that under Wisconsin state law, the landlord, have 21 days to return the security deposit back to them after their move out date and how it will be returned. If they need it to be by physical check, they must provide a forwarding address. I require that they leave their keys in the unit. However, I do change the locks once a tenant moves out. I attach a cleaning checklist and the cost associated to each item. And that's going to be directly affecting their security deposit. I also make sure to mention that any smoke damage caused will also have additional charges, as cleaning the walls are no joke. Plus, getting the smell out of the unit is nearly impossible. So there will be some sort of penalty for it. I believe in mine, it's like a $300 penalty if there is like absolutely no way that I can get anything cleaned off the walls. Like it's damage to that yellow color, or like you get every cleaner in there and it still just reeks, you're gonna get hit with that.
This is especially important. I think I mentioned it in a previous episode, but especially important if you have a furnished unit. That's why I don't even allow smokers to rent out my units. That's a question that we've asked, or that we've, had to deal with people who have come here and smoked, and they, as much as they reassure you, at least in my experience, as much as we've had people reassure us that they're not going to smoke inside, that they're going to, keep their distance away from windows, off the wooden porch, they don't always do that.
Yeah.
We've had people smoking inside on multiple occasions. We've had people smoking in the doorway with the door open. And so I don't know how strict you can get with like long-term tenants, but at least with like Airbnb and those platforms, you can just say if you smoke, you're not allowed to stay here. And that's, I guess, a risk that we haven't been willing to take on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame you. The smoke damage is no joke. And I know that it's kind of hard with long-term tenants because obviously you're not there every single day. And a lot of people don't house hack, so they're not going to be, in a close quarters to them. But if you do the yearly inspection, you'd be able to notice. And with that is a lease violation, so they do get fined. Make sure that it is a fine that they don't want to pay again, because if you charge them $20 to that one time, I mean that's not shit.
Not a
So
big enough incentive or
no.
disincentive. Yeah.
Yeah, so and with my lease agreement, I say you have 3 times that you can do as far as lease violations. If you hit the third time, we're looking at a 28-day notice. So you got to make sure that it is something that they don't want to go through,
right,
in order for them to actually take it seriously.
Yeah, we follow the same process. It's sort of like the 3 strikes and you're out thing. And that's, I believe, on Airbnb, they follow the same thing where like the first, you can, if there's like some sort of violation where they're not listening to house rules or they break the lease and you're booked on Airbnb, you can let Airbnb know. They will reach out to the tenant and then, communicate that if it happens again, then at that point, I think it's twice on Airbnb. So if you've reached out now the second time, then you can end their reservation. But we like to give them the benefit of the doubt. So for us, it's a 3-strike rule. Well, we'll just reach out to them first without getting Airbnb involved. And then if it happens again, then we'll go through the process.
Well, that's very nice of you. And I feel like that's really cool that Airbnb has your back on that as well.
Yeah, it is nice. And I think I forgot to mention it in the episode where we talked about short and midterm rentals, but another benefit of being a super host is when you do need to reach out to Airbnb and you're a super host, you go to the front of the line. So your hold times are like non-existent, which is
nice. That's super nice. I mean, you earned it, so that does
Yeah.
make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of all the regular cleaning checklists and the itemized charges that would be associated to that, other additional charges are not picking up dog poop, leaving bulky furniture, leaving any type of personal items or even vehicles. So you got to keep that in mind. Sometimes people have their broken down vehicles that haven't touched in years, and then they leave it for you to basically deal with. So make sure that you have that in there, and you have to charge them. If you have to tow out a car, you have to charge them, and they have to be prepared to take that hit, because obviously that costs money and that costs time, and nobody wants to deal with that.
Yeah.
I make sure to mention in the email that any damage found in the unit will be documented on our end. And this is to protect you as a landlord. You don't want to get into a legal battle over a security deposit without pictures. It doesn't help. You need to fully document everything on your end. You don't want anything to be left to chance or a he said, she said situation. You as a landlord, you're a business owner, you are the owner of the property. You should have everything on your end to display that you're not messing around and that everything that you're saying can be backed up. I also request that they text, email, or call me once they have fully moved out, and then head over ASAP to conduct their official final inspection. So yes, I do the final inspection while they're in the unit, just to make sure that I know what kind of flip I'm doing once they are out of there. But obviously, when you go into the unit after they've moved out, that's a different story, because a lot of the times they do leave things behind. They don't always clean everything that you have on there. So make sure that you go there as soon as possible to make sure what the unit condition is.
Yeah, you did mention it earlier than this too, but just making sure that you do some sort of inspection, whether it's once a year if you have a long-term tenant, or in my case with midterm rentals, somewhere halfway between their the amount of time that they're staying. I'll also just pop in and let them know. Make sure to give them their 24-hour notice minimum, preferably longer than that, so you guys can schedule a time to walk through everything together. But making sure that like we said earlier, it might be a passive income stream, but there's some things that you just have to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. Lastly, they need to make sure to take the utilities out of their name. It is a pain in the ass if they don't do it themselves. So make sure to send them reminders and check with the utility company the day before to see if they've called them or not. Like I said, it's their account, so you can't take it in and out of their name for them. That's something that they don't realize, and you really need to lay that out for them, because I mean, it is kind of common sense, but like I said, not a lot of people realize that the landlord themselves can't be like, they're done, they're out of there, so can you terminate their service? They have to do it themselves.
And not to
Because that
mention,
could be anybody calling and being like,
right.
shut off their water,
Yeah.
like why?
Be a crazy ex-boyfriend, you don't know.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
logically, that makes sense that they themselves have to call and say, like, I'm moving out on this day. I'm no longer going to be there. Don't charge me, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and I like that you have them do it while you're there, like when switching over the utilities, and then also when they're moving out, making sure that you are actively having them do it with you, because if they forget and a week goes by, I don't know if it's the same in Wisconsin, but in Minnesota, you can't go back in retrospect and say, oh, actually, I shouldn't be paying for these days. They should have been. or actually, oops, I should have been paying for this week that I moved in and forgot to switch over the utilities. That's still on the person whose name was on the utilities originally. There's no back pay.
Right. And, sometimes that could be from the tenants having a lot of things on their plate as far as moving in and moving out. They have a lot going on. They have a lot of things pulling them in different directions. So definitely having reminders and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing is really helpful. And then sometimes they want to pull a fast one on you and they don't want to put the utilities in their name right away to avoid it as much as possible. So just making sure that, if you want to go to the extreme of not handing the keys until they have that in their names, then that's definitely a good way to go about that, because you will get stuck with the bill. So that pretty much sums up the move out email. So I'm going to cover the move out day, the actual day. So if all goes well, the tenant does not hold over, the tenant moves out like they said they would, then it's time for you to work your magic to make sure that the unit becomes re-rentable. You have scheduled cleaners, your flip crew, and any other maintenance professionals to come that very day to get started. Or maybe it's a light flip and you're not flipping anything. Or maybe it's a light flip or you're not flipping anything and it just needs to have a once over as far as cleaning. This is when you rekey, assess the damage, clean, replace, upgrade, and like I mentioned, take pictures of everything. So don't go jumping into cleaning, don't go into jumping into repairs. Make sure that you walk in there, you have your phone or your camera ready to go, and then you take all the pictures that you can. I usually have on my G Drive folders for each of my units. I have move in folders, I have move out folders, and with all of the pictures that I take, I just upload it so that I have them in one place and I never lose them.
Yeah, documentation is key for everything. It doesn't matter what stage of the process you are of like buying a home, making your home rentable, going through like renovations, getting a new tenant, having your check-ins with your tenant while they're there or moving out, having that documentation is so key. If you do have furnished rentals like I do, we talked a little bit in our episode, I think it was episode 5, making sure that you are, doing the laundry and that like everything looks cleaner. If the tenant says, oh yeah, I washed all the bedding, just check it over, make sure it's actually clean, and like your plates and silverware in the drawers are clean too, because that's a really bad first impression if you get someone moving in and they're like, oh, this is gross, like did you actually not clean? Just check everything over.
Yeah, I feel like that's especially key for midterm to short-term rentals. It's just having that once over. Your eyes need to be the last eyes, is what I like to say.
Yes, I love that.
So let's talk about security deposits. The last step in a move out is returning the security deposit. As I mentioned before, in the state of Wisconsin, we have 21 days to return that back to the tenants. I don't know what type of time frame there is for you guys in Minnesota, but that's ours.
I think it's similar. Yeah, I think 21 days is the same for us.
So this time frame should give you plenty of time to document the condition the unit was left in, take pictures of the unit, and do the math of whatever you would need to charge them. Here's a hot tip. It is illegal to have required carpet cleaning in your lease agreement, and you cannot charge the previous tenants for not doing so. If you have this in your lease, I suggest on making revisions on that portion. The majority of my move outs have been pretty seamless. A lot of my previous tenants were respectful and followed my cleaning checklist to a T, so they typically got it back within a few days. I have had 2 heavy flips, 1 heavy clean and 1 medium clean. When it comes to move outs, the rest were super easy to process. So for the heavy to medium flips and cleans, I think it took about maybe like 3 days to get back. I don't take the full 21 days. There's no need for me to do so. I'm usually really on top of all of the processes when it comes to being a landlord. So I know that they are in the midst of paying a move-in cost for a different place or whatever the case may be. So I like to be mindful of that as well.
Yes, and something to note that's interesting about Minnesota and security deposits is that you actually have to pay the tenant interest on the security deposit. I think it's like 5% interest. So for the whole year that you have that security deposit, you have to be paying them interest, which is interesting because I don't know a bank where you actually get 5% interest
Dude,
just
that fucking
back.
sucks.
Yeah.
Like, that is terrible.
Yes, but with my strategy, short-term tenants, that's not really like a huge deal, but that's just another incentive to give them their money back ASAP.
Yes. Yes. I am going to end with a few notes here. So this episode covers a best case scenario move out. Everyone's happy in the end. The move out was amicable, and you are able to have a clean move out to move in with the next tenant. In a future episode, I will cover the not so happy process of an eviction and holdover tenants. I have done at least 100 evictions. I'm not kidding. Like when I say 100 evictions, I fucking mean 100 evictions
That's
for
insane.
several different counties in Wisconsin, and I have stories to tell.
I'm sure you have stories after 100 evictions, but I am very thankful for you that it hasn't been any of your properties, that it's just been through the property management company that you worked for.
Knocking on
Knock
wood.
on wood, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've been called every type of word under the sun. I've been called the hard C. I've been
Oh,
called a bitch. I've been, everything. I've been called a bloodsucker and all of this. Like,
yeah.
I don't care about people and all this other things. But I'm like, hey, I've given you a lot of leeway here, and it takes a lot for somebody to be taken to or through the eviction process. So I have been that type of person where I have not been liked by many people. And but I was actually really good at this job. So I don't know what that says about me.
Hey, I mean, people skills, if you can take all of the insults hurled at you and you can come up stronger on the other end, then that's just a benefit in my opinion.
I mean, I had days where I cried, but
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's super fair.
yeah. And I will leave you with some food for thought. The best way to maximize the rent you can charge is by what you do when a tenant moves out. Investing in your property by updating things and sprucing it up equals in higher rent. So basically what you put in, you take out.
Yeah, and higher rent often, I mean, there's some correlation that if people are being more responsible with their money and can afford a nicer unit, you're gonna get a better tenant out of it too. So my philosophy is always to have like the nicest unit available because that's gonna attract the nicest tenants.
I love that. Yeah, and it's very true. I have had a unit that's just like, all right, and it's not going to be somebody's forever home. And I've had a unit where it's like, this is somebody's forever home, and they're going to love being here. So I definitely understand that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again for all the info, move out process. It's something that every landlord is going to have to deal with at some point. So I think these key details, what to do with the security deposit, how do you do your lease, what about inspections, all of that is so helpful. So I appreciate the info, and I'm sure our listeners will too.
Of course, catch us on the next episode. We are going to be wilding out on every single one, so you won't want to miss it.
Yeah, thank you guys. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Passive Aggressive Income was written, recorded, edited, and produced by co-hosts and creators Mims and Lexi. We truly want to thank our listeners, collaborators, friends, and family that continuously support us for all the love we receive. If you enjoy our show, please give us a glowing rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, follow us on Facebook and Instagram to see what we are up to. For any inquiries, please email passiveaggressiveincome2023@gmail.com. Episodes of Passive Aggressive Income are available wherever you listen to podcasts, so make sure to subscribe and like us on your favorite streaming platform.